It's a Tuesday evening, and Carol is sitting at her kitchen table with a legal pad and a highlighter that's running out of ink. She's 58. The kids are grown. The house is paid off. Her husband Ray retired last year, and they celebrated with a cruise they're still paying off on a Visa card. And Carol is doing something she has never done before. In 34 years of work, she is actually doing the retirement. Not the vague version where you look at your 401k balance and feel okay about it. The real version. The kind where you write down every number, every income source, every monthly expense, and you try to make them balance on the other side of a date circled on a calendar that is now 4 years away. The highlighter runs out somewhere around the line item for prescription costs. Carol puts it down. She stares at the scene. Then she picks up her phone and types, how much money do I actually need to retire? The answer she gets is $1.5 million. Some sites say $2 million. One says 3. Carol has $340,000 in her 401k. This video is for Carol, and it is for the version of you that hasn't done the math, and also for the version of you that has done the math and is now staring at the ceiling. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong about retirement numbers, because the financial industry has done something almost elegant in how it obscures the truth. You've probably heard the benchmark, the rule of thumb. By the time you retire, you need to have saved 10 to 12 times your annual salary. If you make $80,000 a year, you need somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. That's the number. That's the goal. Here's what they don't tell you. That benchmark was designed for a world where you retire at 65 and die at 78. That is a 13-year retirement. That's what the math was built around. Now look at what the CDC actually says about life expectancy for someone who reaches 65 today. A 65-year-old woman has a 50% chance of living past 87. A couple, both 65, has a better than even chance that one of them makes it to 92. So we built the entire retirement savings framework around a 13-year window and then quietly extended the window to 25 or 30 years, and nobody updated the benchmark.
The financial industry kept selling the same target. The actuaries quietly updated the tables, and the gap between what people were told to save and what they actually need got very wide very fast. Carol is not behind because she failed. Carol is behind because she was running toward a finish line that kept moving. Now, let's talk about the actual numbers, because this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the most comprehensive look at American household wealth, shows that the median retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64 is around $185,000. Not $800,000, not $1 million, $185,000. And before you say, well, maybe people have other accounts, when you add up everything, 401ks, IRAs, pensions, all of it, the median total for this age bracket sits around $200,000 to $250,000, depending on the survey year. So the median American 10 years from retirement has about 1/5 of what the standard benchmark says they need.
And here's the detail that makes it worse. That median number is being pulled up by people who are doing very well. If you strip those out and look at what's typical rather than average, you find that roughly 40% of Americans in their late 50s and early 60s have less than $100,000 saved for retirement. Not a little behind, not slightly underfunded, less than $100,000. At the standard 4% withdrawal rate, the rule that says you can pull 4% of your savings each year without running out of money, $100,000 generates $4,000 a year, about $333 a month. Carol's $340,000, which felt okay until she did the math, generates about $13,600 a year at 4%, a little over $1,100 a month from her own savings. Add Social Security. The average benefit right now is around $1,800 a month. So Carol and Ray, if they both claim at full retirement age, might have $3,600 a month between them from Social Security, and maybe $1,100 from savings. That's $4,700 a month, $56,400 a year for two people in a world where the average American spends about $60,000 a year before healthcare.
Now, Ray is going to say what everyone says at this point, but we have the house, and he's right, they do. It's worth about $480,000 and they own it outright. That's real. That's money. Except it's not money in any way that actually helps them pay for February. You cannot hand your mortgage-free deed to the electric company. You cannot eat equity. Carol can't show up at CVS and trade square footage for her blood pressure medication. They want to access that $480,000. They have three options. Sell the house, take the equity, and then go buy a different house in the same market, which now costs $480,000. Refinance through a reverse mortgage, which comes with fees and restrictions and the quiet erosion of the one thing they own outright. Or take out a home equity line of credit at something like 8 or 9% interest, which is a bank generously offering to charge them 9% to borrow their own money back, which is honestly a business model worth admiring from a distance. The house is real wealth, but it's frozen wealth, and the retirement savings gap for most Americans looks much, much worse if you strip out home equity and ask what they actually have that they can spend. The answer for the median household in their late 50s is somewhere around $80,000 to $100,000 in liquid or semi-liquid assets. That is the actual number between them and the thing they've been calling retirement.
Here is where I need to explain something called sequence of returns risk, because it sounds like a technical term invented to put people to sleep, but it is actually one of the most important and least discussed forces in retirement planning. The concept is simple. Say you retire at 65 with $500,000. In your first year, the market drops 30%. Your portfolio is now worth $350,000. You also withdrew $20,000 to live on, so you're at $330,000. The next 4 years are great. The market recovers fully, but you're recovering from a smaller base because you've been drawing from it the whole time. You never get back to where you were. Now, reverse it. Same market performance, same total returns over 20 years, but the bad years come last instead of first. You retire, get 5 great years, build a cushion, and then the downturn happens when your portfolio is large enough to absorb it. Completely different outcome. Same total market performance, same withdrawal rate. Different sequencing of returns. One person runs out of money, the other doesn't. And here's the brutal part. You have absolutely no control over which world you retire into. Carol and Ray are circling 2028 on the calendar. Whether 2028 is the beginning of a 5-year bull market or the opening act of a correction is not information they have access to. People who retired in 2000 got the dot-com crash in year 1. People who retired in 2009 got one of the longest bull markets in American history starting day 1. Same age, same savings rate, completely different outcomes because of time. This is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to understand that the safe retirement isn't just about how much you have. It's about how you structure what you have so that a bad first year doesn't permanently break the math.
Now let's talk about the cost nobody puts in the spreadsheet until it's too late. Healthcare. Fidelity publishes an annual estimate of how much a retired couple will spend on healthcare costs over their retirement. The current number is $315,000 per couple after Medicare. Because here's what Medicare does not cover: most dental, most vision, most hearing, and essentially all long-term care. Long-term care is its own category of financial event. The average cost of a private room in a nursing home is now over $108,000 a year. Assisted living, the step before that, averages around $60,000 to $75,000 a year. Depending on the market, the average stay in a nursing facility is 2.5 years. One person, 2.5 years, $270,000. And about 70% of Americans turning 65 will need some form of long-term care. Carol's $340,000 in retirement savings is her entire cushion. One extended nursing home stay consumes it completely, and then she's down to Social Security and the house she now has to sell. Long-term care insurance exists, and it would cover this, but the window to buy it at a reasonable premium is somewhere in your early to mid-50s. After that, premiums spike sharply. Many major insurers have already exited that market entirely because they kept underestimating how long people would live and how much care they'd actually use. The product exists. It's just expensive, increasingly unavailable, and something the vast majority of Americans have never purchased. Partly because thinking about needing a nursing home in your 50s requires sitting with a version of your future self that most people would rather not meet.
Let's zoom out, because this isn't just Carol's problem. It's a structural one, and understanding the structure explains why so many people who did everything right are still short. For most of the 20th century, retirement had 3 legs: Social Security, the pension, and personal savings. The stool was stable. You could survive if one leg was weak. Then the pension disappeared. Between 1980 and today, the share of private sector workers with a traditional pension, a defined benefit plan where an employer promises you a specific monthly check for life, fell from roughly 38% to under 15%. The 401k was invented in 1978, almost by accident, as a tax shelter for executives. Over the next 2 decades, corporations realized it could replace the pension entirely and shift the entire investment risk from the company to the employee. This was sold as empowerment. You're in control of your retirement. You make the decisions. What it actually meant was that roughly 100 million Americans who had no training in asset allocation, no experience managing market volatility, and no time to become experts were now personally responsible for the single most complex financial undertaking of their lives. And they would make decisions under conditions that professional fund managers specifically try to avoid. They'd sell during crashes because they were scared. They'd cash out when they changed jobs because they needed money and the 10% penalty felt abstract until it wasn't. They'd never rebalance because they didn't know what rebalancing was. The companies saved a fortune. The employees got autonomy they didn't ask for and weren't equipped for. The stool now has 2 wobbly legs and a third one that's been slowly getting sawed through since 1983.
Which brings us to Social Security. The 2025 Social Security Trustees Report says the combined trust funds will be depleted by 2035. Not eliminated, depleted. When that happens, incoming payroll taxes would cover roughly 77% of scheduled benefits. So unless Congress acts, everyone drawing Social Security in 2035 and beyond will automatically receive a check that is 23% smaller than promised. Carol turns 65 in 2031. Full retirement age is 67. She was planning to claim at 67 in 2033. That's 2 years before the wall. And the uncomfortable math is that a 23% cut to Social Security for someone depending on that check is not an abstraction. For Carol and Ray, that's $828 a month disappearing. That's a car payment, a utility bill, and most of a grocery run gone. Now, Congress has fixed Social Security before. In 1983, facing a similar depletion timeline, a bipartisan deal raised the retirement age, increased payroll taxes, and bought the system several more decades. It worked, but it required political agreement at a moment when both parties could look at the same spreadsheet and reach the same conclusion. Whether the current political environment permits that kind of agreement is a question this video is not going to answer. But 77% of Americans near retirement say they're worried Social Security won't be fully there when they need it. They are not being pessimistic. They are reading the government's own report.
Let's total up where Carol and Ray actually stand. $340,000 in retirement savings, $480,000 in home equity they can't easily spend, a Social Security check that might arrive 23% lighter, a healthcare cost estimate of $315,000 that isn't included anywhere in their current plan, a retirement that could last 30 years, and a benchmark they were told to hit that was designed for a retirement that lasts 13. That is not a comfortable picture, but here is what it is not. It is not hopeless. Carol is 58, Ray is 60. They have 4 years until Carol's target retirement date, maybe 5 or 6 if they adjust. That window is smaller than it was at 45, but it is real. And compounding, even at the back end of a working life, is not nothing. Here is what the math actually says. If Carol and Ray increase their monthly savings from whatever they're currently contributing to $2,000 a month combined, which is aggressive but possible on 2 incomes, and they earn a 7% average annual return over 6 years, they add roughly $175,000 to that $340,000 base. That gets them to $515,000 by retirement. Not the $1.5 million the websites told them to have, but at 4% withdrawal, $515,000 generates $20,600 a year. Combined with Social Security, even the reduced version, they might be looking at $50,000 to $55,000 a year. That's tight. It requires a smaller life than they imagined. It requires the house they have rather than the condo in Scottsdale they discussed once. It probably requires Ray going back to part-time consulting work for 2 or 3 years after he planned to.
The version of retirement that most Americans in their 50s are carrying around in their heads, the one with the golf and the grandchildren and the comfortable disappearance from the workforce, that version was built on assumptions that stopped being true somewhere around 2000, and nobody officially canceled the original mark. The pension didn't announce
announce its departure. The 4% rule didn't come with an asterisk about sequence of returns. Nobody sent a memo about long-term care, and the Social Security Trustees report doesn't run on the front page of any. So people like Carol did the responsible adult things. They worked, they saved what they could. They raised kids and paid mortgages and occasionally put money into a 401k they didn't fully understand. And they assumed that the system they were participating in was roughly designed for their success. It was designed for their participation. Those are different things. So here's what Carol does on Wednesday morning. She opens the 401k app she usually closes within 11 seconds. She bumps her contribution from 8% to 14%. She calls her HR department, asks about catch-up contributions, because she is over 50, which means the IRS allows her to put an extra $7,500 a year into a 401k on top of the standard limit. She didn't know that was a thing. A lot of people don't.
She and Ray have a conversation about the Scottsdale condo, a real one, not the version where both people are being polite. They decide that working until 64 instead of 62 is not failure, it's just math. And she looks into a long-term care insurance policy. The premiums at 58 are not cheap. They are significantly less expensive than a nursing home at 80 that wipes out everything they built. None of this is a financial guru. There is no secret strategy. There is no asset class being overlooked. It is just Carol on a Wednesday morning deciding to stop treating her retirement as something that is going to work out because it has to, and starting to treat it as a math problem with moving parts she can actually touch. The compounding window is narrower at 58 than it was at 38. It does not care. It is still open. It will stay open for exactly as long as Carol keeps working, saving, and not looking away from the number on the legal pad.
The retirement system in 2026 is not a scam. It's something slightly more complicated than a scam. It's a system built in one era, partially dismantled over the next 40 years, and never honestly renegotiated with the people depending on it. And somewhere, right now, Carol's highlighter has run out, and she is staring at a legal pad with real numbers. The question is whether she gets up and finds another highlighter, or whether she puts the pad in a drawer and hopes the ceiling has an answer.